Welcome, actor Paul Wesley, to Tennis Channel Live. It's great to have you here on the program. I'm going to start by having you tell me a story. How did you fall in love with the sport of tennis?
Yeah, you know, I'm a new tennis fanatic, and I really am a genuine tennis fanatic, not like a phony tennis fanatic. But I'd say the addiction hit me in the last 2 years. I met GAEL MONFILS through friends. We became buddies, and I started following his matches. And then it went from like following every one of his matches to watching every single match. Then it went to like becoming a fanatic and waking up at 3 in the morning to watch the matches that were, taking place in Europe or the Middle East. And I got hit with the bug, man. I just love it. I just love it.
You're just like us, Paul. So MONFILS, obviously one of the most creative, athletic, incredible players on a tennis court. What goes through your mind when you see these highlights?
I mean, yeah, it's wild. You know, the thing about GAEL that I just respect so much is, he's just an unbelievable athlete, right? Like, you could imagine that guy playing any sport and pretty much excelling. And then on top of that, his sportsmanlike conduct, like he's always a good guy. He always has a smile. He's always in a good mood. And I just think setting an example, like having so much pressure, playing in front of thousands and thousands of people with millions watching, and being able to like have fun and play with the audience and have a good time, and also be in the top 10 right now is just, it's incredibly commendable. He's also like one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
Yeah, it is always a pleasure to see GAEL play. You've been to a lot of tournaments. You've been to the U.S. Open 4 times, Roland Garros, Indian Wells. You were at the U.S. Open last year. What stood out to you about that final between Nadal and Medvedev?
Oh, man. For me, I think the biggest sort of the thing that I sort of recognized, and I had seen Nadal, I think maybe it was my second time seeing Nadal, but ultimately, what was so incredible is that Medvedev caught this like wind, and he really had this energy, and the crowd always kind of wants the underdog to win in a way, even though Nadal's, one of the most adored players in the world. But they started to go towards Medvedev. Everyone was kind of rooting for Medvedev, and he had been the bad boy of that US Open. And then suddenly Nadal just took the energy of the crowd, absorbed it, and just kept pumping himself up and just turned the tide. And then I realized, like, that's what it takes to be Rafa Nadal. That's why he is Nadal. He just did this, like, superhuman thing.
We're here on Tennis Channel Live with actor Paul Wesley. You talk about what it takes to be Rafa Nadal, one of the greatest tennis players in the history of the sport. What does it take to be a great actor? What similarities do you see between acting and being a tennis player?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For me, I think subconsciously that's why I gravitated so much towards tennis, because it's obviously tremendously physical athleticism, but I do think 50% of it is psychological, and it's a one-on-one sport. And I feel like acting, in a way, it's not a competition, but it is a mental endurance. It's a game of like trying to persevere and not overthink, and use your instinct, and ride in energy. And when I watch tennis, it's an art form to me. Unlike I love sports, but like when I watch basketball or football, it's just not the same, because it's a team effort. This is like purely psychological, one-on-one warfare. And for me, I feel that way sometimes. If I'm going out there, and I've done a few plays in New York City, and I really feel like it's resting on my shoulders, and it's live. And it's an enthralling feeling, but it can be heady, which when you see that, you see players get heady, and you see actors get heady. Absolutely.
I mean, at least 90% mental. I mean, so much is up in the head, and that's why the big three have done what they've done for so long. You're rocking the beard right now, Paul, during the quarantine times. Reminds us a little bit of another French player, Benoit Paire. We're going to throw up a photo of Benoit. What do you think of this?
I think Benoit Paire looks so much better than me, because he's clearly groomed his beard. He's got the popped collar. I'm like full quarantine. There's no grooming. My wife looks at me like every day she's in shock I'm just going to keep it going. I'm going to keep this thing going, and I hope to one day groom it and look as good as Benoit Paire.
Can you do that face for us so we can see it side by side with There we go. I think I see it. I see a little Benoit Paire in you, Paul.
Thank you. Merci. Merci beaucoup. I have to smash my racket, though, right?
You do. You have to break it into pieces, all of the rackets.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure having you here. You can see Paul. Tell Me a Story, CBS All Access. Stay safe and healthy, and continue to watch Tennis Channel during this time off, and hopefully we'll see you on a court soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really, really exciting for me to be here.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Much more to come here on Tennis Channel Live.